not all protests are created equally. And today, the way you protest is everything.
And that's causing rifts in some of the biggest climate action groups in the world.
2023 has been the year of the climate protest.
We've travelled around the UK speaking to protesters about their tactics.
My name is Callum. I'm probably going to join Just Stop Oil.
It's a climate con.
I'm a co-founder of Extinction Rebellion.
And ask politicians if those actions are working.
Nowadays, climate activists like Just Stop Oil are making headlines on a regular basis.
But arguably, the most successful climate protests of late have been against green policies.
The Conservative Party candidate, 13,965.
The expansion of London's ultra-low emissions zone was one of the biggest factors behind the Conservatives winning the 2023 by-election in Uxbridge and South Ruislip.
I don't think there's any doubt that ULEZ was the reason that we lost the by-election in Uxbridge.
But it isn't just about Uxbridge. This by-election result has arguably led to the government softening their climate policies. We're in London to meet Nick.
I'm not supposed to wear a seatbelt, am I?
One of the leaders of the Anti-ULEZ movement.
What have you guys achieved so far? Like, what's the impact that you've had?
I'll tell you the first thing we won Uxbridge for the Tories. 100%, no doubt about it whatsoever. We done that.
London's ultra-low emission zone, or ULEZ, aims to improve air quality in the capital by charging heavy polluting smaller vehicles to drive on its roads. It was first implemented in 2019, but in 2023 it was massively expanded, encompassing around 5 million more Londoners.
But some say the restrictions on driving go too far. As well as taking to the streets, some anti-ULEZ protesters are resorting to vandalising ULEZ cameras. According to the Met Police, in 2023, 1,095 crimes have been committed relating to ULEZ cameras. What do you think about the people that are smashing up cameras?
What do I think about them? I think they're bloody heroes, to be honest. What are they supposed to do? Seriously, you know, these are the people having their lives ruined. Don't condone, but I will never, ever, ever condemn them for it.
These anti-ULEZ groups have clearly had a political impact.
That's what you think, don't you? You actually...
It's become a culture wars touchstone and shown that voters could back policies that appear to be, quote-unquote, anti-woke. Do you think you could move towards more civil disobedience, things like Just Stop Oil do, or is that completely off the table, do you reckon?
I don't think you should rule that out, to be honest.
On the other side of the debate, reluctance to disrupt has crept into one of the Green movement's biggest protest groups. At the start of 2023, Extinction Rebellion announced they'd quit. Their showy, disruptive protests were a thing of the past.
Do I think Extinction Rebellion has been a success? I am so pleased with what we've achieved in Extinction Rebellion, but we are still on a trajectory for the destruction of the life support systems on Earth.
Dr. Gail Bradbrook is one of the 3 people who founded Extinction Rebellion, so I'm off to Stroud to ask her why.
The focus for Extinction Rebellion is on growing the movement. It's also really important to grow the strength of local groups, to think about how to organise well. So these are things that aren't very showy, you're not going to see that in the news, but it's the hard work of social movement building.
This culminated in the big one, a 4-day protest in the centre of London in the spring. Huge crowds took to the city, and while it may look similar to previous protests, there was no blocking busy roads, no disrupting the public.
No one here is being arrested, no one's sticking themselves to anything, no one's throwing any soup. I hope they haven't got any soup with them, to be quite honest with you. But, you know, we're asking people to step up at this time, to move one rung up of their comfort zone into activism.
And then there is Just Stop Oil. The group have embraced these tactics and have become infamous for their public actions, disrupting events and blocking traffic. Since the start of 2023, hundreds of Just Stop Oil protesters have been arrested in London alone. The group, along with similar organisations like Insulate Britain, seem to split opinion. groups like Just Stop Oil are effective?
No.
No, I don't think so at all, no.
Why not?
I'm not saying what they're trying to do isn't the right idea, but I just think the way they're doing it is wrong because it's making people go against them.
Would anything that groups like that do make any changes in your life, do you think?
In my personal life, no. I agree that it's put backs up, which it might not be great for the cause, but I don't think people have talked about this sort of thing as much since they started doing it.
Go.
What the is this? Jesus Christ, who the hell do you think you are?
Sky News visited a Just Stop Oil training session and spoke to some potential recruits there.
For the future generations, I've got to step up and do something, and a little bit more radical, because nobody's listening when you do it passively and quietly.
You've reached a point where you're prepared to break the law?
Yes, I suppose, yeah, slightly.
Tactics will always need to change. I think for now, these tactics have worked. They've rattled the government. The fact that they've had to introduce new legislation in order to arrest people more quickly shows that they're intimidated by people going out and protesting.
That new legislation is the Public Order Act. It essentially has given authorities new powers to clamp down on disruptive protests and deliver harsher sentences. So, apart from influencing new anti-protest laws, just how much political impact have these protests actually had? The Anti-ULEZ campaigners may claim that by-election win, but that hasn't led to ULEZ being removed.
And what about Just Stop Oil? By and large, both the Conservatives and Labour have stayed away from supporting them. To understand why, we spoke to Sky's political correspondent Mari Aurora.
They feel like it's potentially politically dangerous, potentially electorally dangerous to outright back these protest groups. There was a poll conducted by YouGov, and it found that 49% of the people surveyed felt the government was not doing enough or not spending enough on things like carbon emissions, reducing our carbon emissions. So it does matter to people. We just don't know yet whether it translates into votes, and also we don't know, people care about the environment, but are they willing to be inconvenienced? Are they willing to be out of pocket in order to improve the environment?
Members of Parliament are only really interested when it comes down to it to their own electors.
Lord Debon, who's worked on climate policy for decades, says protesting isn't what will change the minds of MPs.
At this time, the biggest job that everyone can do is to be in touch personally at the local surgery with their Member of Parliament.
Green Party MP Caroline Lucas is in a unique position in politics. She spent years as both an activist and an MP. She was even arrested protesting against fracking in Balcombe in 2013 and later acquitted. I went down to Brighton to ask her whether she thinks activism has had any impact on actual policies or laws.
I think activism can be a way of grabbing the public's attention, putting things higher up the political agenda, making the space really then actually for all kinds of other people to come into that space, to be able to really push government to make change. So although you can't necessarily say that a protest on day A made a difference to a decision 3 months later, let's say, it certainly changes the nature of the political conversation that's happening and gives, I think, a little bit more cover for politicians to be bolder in taking the action they need to take.
We asked the government if anyone would speak to us about the impact of climate activism on their policies, but no one was available.
They did send us this statement though. The UK is a world leader on net zero, cutting emissions faster than any other major country, and we remain committed to meeting our climate targets while driving economic growth and bringing down energy bills. While we respect the right to protest, people's day-to-day lives should not be disrupted, and criminal activity will not be tolerated.
Throughout 2023, the cycle of protests, disruption and arrests has been repeated.
And regardless of their tactics, it's hard to say whether any of these protests have or haven't worked. In November, after months of climate activism, the government announced plans for a new annual system for awarding oil and gas licences in the North Sea.
And ULEZ is going nowhere, despite the continued controversy surrounding it. But one thing is for sure, the protesters and groups we spoke to remain as determined as ever, meaning protests and actions like this will keep happening in 2024 and beyond.